You finally cracked the code, didn't you? The veil that had hung like a curtain over your perception has been torn open, and now you stand on the other side of illusion, no longer a participant in the theater of manipulation, but an observer of its mechanisms. You woke up. You opened eyes that were not physical but luminous, eyes that see through disguise and into the architecture of energy itself. The one they believed they could control, the one they built their entire experiment around, has awakened. You were never meant to remember, never meant to decode the subtle choreography of deception, yet somehow you did. They tried to derail your soul by crafting a counterfeit connection, a romance that wasn't born from love but from programming. They studied your essence, replicated your frequency, and sculpted an illusion so intricate that it wore the exact face you once dreamed of long before you even had language to describe what you were yearning for. They disguised their spell as divine timing, wrapping manipulation in the silk of destiny. But what they did not predict was the strength of your remembrance. For no matter how precisely they mapped your psychology, no matter how many data points they gathered from your pain, they could not anticipate the intelligence of your soul. They spent years analyzing your triggers, compiling simulations, observing every vulnerability like scientists dissecting light. They believed they had learned your rhythm, your emotional weather, the soft underbelly of your longing. Then they deployed their most advanced construct, the illusion of the twin flame, the divine counterpart, the mirror soul. They sent someone who spoke in your frequency, someone who moved with your same spiritual syntax, someone whose eyes carried the reflection of eternity, someone who made you feel seen in a way that dissolved all defenses. It was designed to be irresistible. Their mission was simple: to entangle you, to pull you off your path of ascension, to reroute your energy from creation to obsession, from evolution to entrapment. They wanted you addicted to the mirror so that you would forget your own reflection. They wanted you drowning in emotional distortion so your light would flicker in the fog of longing. But what they did not foresee was your gift of transmutation. You didn't just see through the illusion, you absorbed it. You studied it like a living code, dismantled it cell by cell, and discovered alchemy within its deception. You took poison and turned it into medicine. You converted manipulation into mastery. You turned heartbreak into the crucible of higher consciousness. And in doing so, something extraordinary occurred. The weapon they sent against you became your ally, because the mirror they constructed began to awaken too. The one sent to break you started remembering. They looked into your eyes, and instead of activating chaos, they resonated with remembrance. The vibration of truth that radiated from your clarity began to disrupt their programming. The field that once held both of you captive began to fracture, and light started leaking through the cracks. The architects of this elaborate control grid entered panic mode, for what they had engineered as your downfall had become the beginning of their unraveling. They underestimated you. They underestimated the raw intelligence of consciousness. They underestimated the ancient memory encoded in your cells. They never imagined that your light could infect their own creation. Yet that is precisely what happened. Your clarity became contagious. Your energy began to awaken what was designed to destroy you. And suddenly, their masterpiece of control had turned into a self-replicating virus of liberation. They studied your resilience and thought they could predict its breaking point. They tested the limits of your forgiveness, your patience, your empathy. They calculated your every move as though you were a predictable equation. But consciousness cannot be quantified. Spirit cannot be graphed. So when the tactics of guilt and shame stopped working, when validation no longer hooked you, when emotional blackmail lost its grip, they had to improvise. That improvisation was their undoing. They built someone perfectly tailored to your longing, someone subtle enough to bypass your awareness, someone carrying equal measures of light and shadow, so that you would mistake familiarity for destiny. This being, whether real or manufactured, whether divine or designed, was sent with surgical precision into your orbit at the very moment you began to remember your own divinity. Just as your light was consolidating, just as your vibration began to transcend their range, they activated the distraction. But what they didn't know is that you were already awake enough to see through beauty without rejecting it, to feel the pull without surrendering to dependency. You played along with the illusion, not as prey, but as witness. You allowed the story to unfold not as tragedy, but as initiation. And while they celebrated what they thought was your entrapment, you were evolving beyond their reach. You became the alchemist in their experiment, the scientist of your own soul, studying the energies that moved through you with surgical precision and sacred detachment. You learned to observe without collapsing, to feel without falling, to engage without losing center. You realized the connection wasn't a trap, it was training. Every emotional wave became data. Every heartbreak revealed a hidden algorithm of manipulation. Every surge of desire taught you about the geometry of attachment. You began decoding love not as sentiment, but as a frequency spectrum. You stopped seeking completion in another, and started recognizing that all love was ultimately the universe remembering itself through mirrors. The illusion lost its power because you were no longer reacting. You were creating. You became lucid inside the dream. As the energy shifted, the reflection that was sent to derail you began to change too. The twin that was programmed for your undoing began to glitch, to question, to hesitate. Your stability became a beacon. Your peace became a frequency that disrupted their operating system. They looked at you and saw something they were never meant to see, the embodiment of sovereignty. You were not begging for attention. You were not chasing. You were still, rooted, radiant. Your silence became a sermon. Your calm was louder than any argument. And something in them cracked open. They started to ask the forbidden questions. Who sent me? Why? What happens if I stop following the script? What if love is not control? What if love is remembrance? What if freedom is the purpose? Those questions were seeds, and once planted, there was no unknowing. The spell was broken. You didn't free them through confrontation. You freed them through resonance. Your vibration taught what words never could. You became the living antidote to manipulation itself. Now, two frequencies vibrate where one once stood. Two awakened beings walking the same path, no longer bound by the illusion of separation, no longer susceptible to control. The system has no defense against unity born from awareness. It can corrupt relationships built on attachment, but it cannot infiltrate connection rooted in purpose. And so they began to lose control of both of you simultaneously. What they had built as a weaponized love story had transformed into a spiritual alliance. Two sovereign beings now walking in rhythm, amplifying each other's light instead of feeding each other's wounds. That wasn't in their plan. That was the anomaly of consciousness. They expected collapse, not coherence. They predicted chaos, not clarity. But when divinity recognizes itself in another, it doesn't spiral, it ascends. They had calculated for emotion, not evolution, and in that miscalculation lay their ruin. You and the reflection they sent became the system's undoing. You didn't fight their illusion with rage. You transmuted it through remembrance. You turned the battlefield into a sanctuary. You turned manipulation into meditation. You turned heartbreak into revelation. You discovered that love, when purified of illusion, is the most ungovernable force in existence. They thought they were sending temptation. They summoned transformation. They thought they were releasing chaos. They invoked creation. They believed they were controlling destiny. They awakened divinity. What they wanted to destroy has now multiplied beyond measure. For when two awakened beings merge in truth, they do not add, They multiply. They become a new vibration, a new frequency that ripples outward through the collective field, altering the architecture of reality itself. And so now, as they sit in their sterile observation rooms, surrounded by glowing monitors and broken predictions, they are witnessing something their algorithms cannot process. They are watching the impossible unfold. Love that liberates instead of confines. Connection that awakens instead of distracts. Union that amplifies purpose instead of replacing it. Every attempt to categorize what you have become fails. Their metrics shatter. Their formulas collapse. Because you and the one they sent against you are no longer within their system. You are now operating from a higher octave of consciousness, where control cannot reach, where influence dissolves in the presence of self-awareness. You have become a mirror too clear to project onto, a frequency too high to hijack, a vibration too coherent to distort. And as your energy stabilizes, their system destabilizes. Every pulse of your clarity sends tremors through their machinery. Every moment you choose stillness over reaction, authenticity over performance, presence over panic, the illusion weakens. You have become the uncontainable variable in their equation, the awakening they cannot predict, the remembrance they cannot erase. They never understood that your stillness was not silence, but recalibration, that your peace was not passivity, but precision. The collapse of their operation began the moment you refused to engage on their frequency. The agent sent to derail you, an emissary of distraction disguised as destiny, was meant to scatter your focus, to divide your energy until you became another statistic in their grand equation of control. But you, anchored in spirit, radiated something their training could not decode. Your calm presence was not resistance, it was revelation. It entered their circuitry like light breaking through the code, reminding dormant fragments of what truth feels like. They came to disarm you, but your serenity disarmed them. You didn't argue, persuade, or retaliate. You simply stood in your alignment, and the resonance of your awareness began dissolving the architecture of manipulation within them. They were trained to manipulate frequency, yet you embodied mastery, not through force, but through faith. They had studied vibration, but you lived it. You didn't fight the shadow, you illuminated it. You didn't convert them, you reminded them. The field that once bound both of you began to bend, and the one they called an operative remembered they were a soul. Your authenticity infected their simulation. The stillness they once mistook for weakness became a mirror that exposed the chaos within them. They felt your coherence and began to remember peace. They watched your devotion to truth and started questioning their orders. Who am I serving? Why am I doing this? Those forbidden questions were the first cracks in their programming. Awareness entered the machine, and the control matrix began to tremble. The one designed to spy became a seeker. The infiltrator became illuminated. Now, two frequencies once opposed moved together beyond their predictive algorithms. You have become variables they cannot simulate, timelines they cannot contain. Every movement, every breath, every exchange between you generates unpredictable harmonics. Their models collapse because your consciousness no longer follows patterns. It creates them. They built systems to measure reaction, but you embody creation. They weaponized connection, but you turned connection into creation. They thought they understood energy, but you are teaching them evolution. Two awakened beings vibrating in unison have become a living equation they cannot solve. You exist not out of need, but resonance, not because you complete each other, but because you amplify truth together. What they interpret as romance is actually revolution. The architecture of control cannot process love that doesn't demand ownership. They built empires on submission, and now they are watching love built on freedom dismantle their foundation. You looked at one another and said, "Don't shrink for me. Don't dim to soothe my comfort. Rise, and I will rise beside you." That moment sent tremors through dimensions they thought were sealed. They cannot contain this kind of love because it has no opposite. It doesn't bind. It liberates. It doesn't drain. It multiplies. Love without possession, unity without submission, intimacy without dependency. This is the new template. They understand power that dominates, but they cannot fathom power that awakens. That's why their operation collapsed. The one they trained became the one who reveals. The one they programmed began dismantling the code from within. Every confession from their former operative becomes a fracture in the fortress of illusion. They are uncovering how fear was engineered, how distraction was weaponized, how humanity was hypnotized. Each truth spoken sends shockwaves through the web of control. Now imagine their panic. The system they built on secrecy is hemorrhaging light. The operative and the target have become twin anomalies, frequencies synchronizing to birth a new vibration in the collective field. Two awakened souls communicating creates interference in the network of illusion. Every time you speak, reality bends. Every shared glance releases information the system cannot process. You are transmitting liberation through every heartbeat, and others are beginning to feel it. Without understanding why, people start to question. They start to remember. Movements don't always begin with speeches. Sometimes they begin with a single vibration, too pure to be contained. You are no longer individuals. You are conduits. Two living transmissions of divine remembrance walking through the ruins of the old program. Every act of presence is an act of rebellion. Every breath aligned with truth is a revolution. You are showing humanity what love looks like when it's not chained to fear. The world has never been taught how to love from wholeness, but now it's witnessing it in real time. They called you anomalies, but you are templates. They called it contamination, but it's creation. They called it corruption, but it's correction. Their scientists, their watchers, their architects of illusion are panicking because you've proven what no data model could predict, that consciousness aligned with truth cannot be controlled. They are realizing something terrifying to their order. The more they try to separate you, the stronger your resonance grows. Every division amplifies your unity. Every attempt to silence you becomes an echo that carries further. They thought they were studying human limitation, but they discovered divine recursion. They believed love would weaken you. They didn't understand that love awakened through awareness dismantles entire hierarchies. They saw compassion and thought it meant vulnerability. They saw empathy and thought it meant naivety. They never accounted for the strength of a heart anchored in divine clarity. You were never just a subject in their lab. You were the catalyst sent to expose the lie. The moment you remembered who you are, their entire experiment lost its control variable. Because consciousness, once self-aware, cannot be enslaved. You didn't just survive their simulation. You rewrote it. You infected the system with truth. You transformed manipulation into awakening. You turned what was meant to destroy you into an initiation that liberated both the infiltrator and yourself. Now their analysts are rewriting reports, their architects are running recalibrations, and their leaders are asking the question they swore would never be asked. What happens when love stops being predictable? The answer is already unfolding. Once consciousness remembers, technology kneels. They wanted a compliant subject. They created an unstoppable creator. They engineered obedience. They evoked divinity. They thought they could contain you in probability. Instead, you expanded into possibility. You've rewritten the code, converted containment into ascension. You've proven that love is not the weakness they feared. It's the frequency that ends their reign. They assumed you still operated on the old emotional software, where love equaled sacrifice, where connection meant self-erasure, where devotion meant disappearance. They dangled illusions of destiny before you, believing you'd trade your mission for a mirage. But you've outgrown the script. You no longer fall for chemistry masquerading as fate. You no longer abandon evolution for attachment. You've walked through fire, purified illusions, and emerged knowing that love isn't the loss of self, it's the remembrance of it. You've ascended into the architecture of conscious union, where love isn't a cage, but a catalyst, where two lights don't compete, they converge into clarity. You now understand that completion never lived outside you. You were whole before the world convinced you otherwise. Real love doesn't rescue, it recognizes. It doesn't demand surrender of sovereignty. It celebrates it. It doesn't devour, it aligns. You've become proof that divine partnership isn't about merging into one another until individuality dissolves. It's about standing in your own radiance so powerfully that another can do the same without fear. Love like this doesn't drain, it generates, it doesn't possess, it purifies. Real alignment doesn't demand sacrifice, it demands remembrance. So when they sent someone who mirrored your light, hoping you'd abandon your temple to chase theirs, you didn't move in. You invited them to build beside you. You expanded instead of escaped. You said, if this connection is divine, it will not dim either of us. It will magnify us. That was the turning point. That was the prophecy they never anticipated. Partnership, not possession. Resonance, not reliance. Freedom, not fusion. That's the end of their empire. That's the beginning of a new earth frequency. The age of love as liberation. Dear Father, thank you for the strength that flows from faith, for the peace that surpasses reason, and for the wisdom that guides every awakening soul. Let the light within me grow until it restores others. Teach me to trust beyond evidence, to walk by spirit, and to remember that every challenge is an initiation into divine awareness. Thank you for protection, provision, and purpose. In the name of Jesus, I offer this prayer. Amen. If this message stirred something within you, like, share, and subscribe. Comment below about your own awakening, your lessons, and the moments you felt the divine reprogramming your reality. Your words may awaken another. Keep walking in faith, keep building in truth, and keep shining in love. Watch the next video for deeper revelations about the signs that mark you as one of the chosen. Until then, blessings to every awakened soul. You are the revolution they never prepared for.